The Center for the Study of the United States is a multi- and interdisciplinary Hi, Victor. Hi, Sizwe.
Hi, afternoon, Shuma.
How are you, sir?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
All good, all good.
Great. Afternoon, colleagues.
Good evening, Craig.
Good evening.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay, thanks. I'm just getting over a cold, but other than that, I'm okay.
Okay. Just a quick one. How do you pronounce your surname? Is it Clulow?
Clulow.
Clu
Clulow.
Oh, Clulow. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Let me
Clulow.
just shut the door. Hang on. Clue as in I've got an idea, and low as in the opposite to
Okay,
high.
got that. Got that. Thank you. Good morning, Marissa.
Morning.
I believe it's morning on your side.
It is, it is.
Glad you.
How are how are you?
All good. How are you?
Doing well, excited for this.
Okay. Let's just wait for our other colleagues to join. Give people some time. Thank you.
Yeah, we're a little early, so can I just finish my lunch?
Okay.
I don't need to, should I put a jacket on or not? Would you like me to put a jacket on?
Uh, if you want to, it's all up to you, sir. Good evening, Lindy.
Hi, Humla.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
All good, all good. Glad that you could
Good,
join.
thanks for
Thank
having me. Evening, Craig. Evening, Marissa.
Hi.
How you guys doing?
Hello. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. Suma, do you know if we can share our screens?
Yes, I've allowed that.
Let's
Do you
see.
know which order we're going to be going in?
Yes, so I've got Lindy first.
Oh, is it?
Yes, then Sizwe, then Craig. No, sorry, wait. So it's Marissa. Oh, sorry. I've just
That's okay.
No worries.
lost my pages here. Okay, so it's
Yeah.
Lindy, Craig, Sizwe, Marissa, and Lawrence.
And is there a Q&A portion of this?
Yes, we'll give 10 minutes for Q&A or remarks.
Got you. And
Yeah.
will you feed us is there a way for us to see the questions beforehand? Like, where are people sending them through the webinar chat?
Yeah, I'll request them to just write them in the webinar chat.
In the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to see them here.
Okay. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Where's everyone from? Or based?
I am based in Stanford, California.
Oh,
There's only one
nice.
state, isn't
Yeah, it's getting nice out. We just went through a heat wave, but it's gotten really nice now. Where are
it?
you
There's
all
only one
based?
state. California is the whole of America, isn't it?
I mean, I think other parts of America would not like to hear that, but I think California is a pretty special place in America.
No. No, I grew up in Alaska.
Oh, no way. I grew up in Maine, so from cold parts. Alaska's beautiful though.
They say once you've been there, you're either there for a week or you're there forever. So
Yeah, I've had a couple friends where that's happened.
you're either there for a week or forever.
Mm-hmm. And where are you all based?
So I'm in
I'm
South
in
Africa.
Kigali, Rwanda. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay, Craig.
So Kigali and then South.
So I'm in South Africa, Johannesburg,
Nice.
and I've been producing the African Smart Cities Summit.
Amazing. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Craig, where you from?
I'm originally Australian,
Ah,
but I left Australia when I was 16. So spent 15 years in Dubai and then 6 in Africa and then 5 in Pakistan, 1 in Saudi, and then nearly 3 in Rwanda.
oh, wow.
Wow.
Just big, large scale property development. Palm Island, you'd know about, obviously.
Mhm.
I was the project director for Palm Island. And then, yeah, just large mixed use, integrated community residential projects, that type of stuff. So
Nice. And then,
spent 6-7
Nice.
years in South Africa.
so you know this place quite well.
Well, I've worked in 42 countries now in Africa, but yeah, lived in Durban and Mhlongo.
Yeah?
Our head office was in Sandton, so I spent a lot of time in Joburg as well. So.
Yeah. Are you gonna come
A
back?
lot of people ask what part of South Africa I'm from, so I think I still haven't shaked the accent.
Nice. Nice. That's great.
Just while we're waiting, I'm going to finish my lunch.
Sorry, I heard you said you've lived in a lot of parts in Africa. If you haven't lived in Lagos, then you haven't lived in Africa. Hi guys, good evening. This is Victor.
Well, the company I work for was actually that's the largest logistics company in the world,
Okay.
and they had big cargo vessels, Africa to China. We had rail business, we had a road business, we had a fuel business, but the only country we weren't allowed to work in was Nigeria. So,
You missed out of something. I don't know for what reason, but
but
you missed out of Africa, really. I mean,
the
Nigeria is
board
it.
said it's too hard.
Lagos, Lagos. That's what I'm talking about. Hard but sweet.
But yeah, no, Angola, Ghana, Guinea, Chad, Mali, Sierra Leone, Namibia, Botswana, Gambia,
Uh,
Zimbabwe,
you know,
Mozambique, and Djibouti. So,
oh, wow, quite a lot. But yeah, well done. Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes, you can go ahead, Victor.
Okay. What is the interest of US in Africa cities?
So it's a broad question. There's a lot of factors that are of an interest for the US and African cities. But you'll hear within the webinar. Let's not start another conversation. We're about to start.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. Thanks.
Could we please just give some of our colleagues a few more minutes? Just start just 5 minutes in the next 5 minutes, please. Colleagues, we are going to start in the next 3 minutes. Can you please just give one of our panelists some time so that he could join in? Okay, I think we can start now. Good morning to our colleagues that are joining us from abroad, and good evening to our colleagues that are locals. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Lindy. My name is Shumalu Vokhalane, and I am the project coordinator for the Africa-US City Relations Project at the African Center for the Study of the United States. The African Center for the Study of the United States is a multi- and interdisciplinary entity established at WITS from March 2018. And our vision is to serve as the leading African research and engagement center, shaping intellectual discourse and deepening the understanding of the US as a nation, society, and global power from an African lens. And we achieve this vision through the mission of innovating and sustaining new ways of understanding the United States relevant to Africa and Africans through research, teaching, outreach programs, public engagements, and publishing. The Africa-US City Relations Project, which I coordinate, is one of the flagship programs of the center. And our focus areas incorporate the resuscitation of sister city partnerships between Africa and US cities, facilitating city-to-city diplomacy, coordinating city-to-city university partnerships, as well as cultivating knowledge on sustainable urban development, particularly looking at smart cities. In commemoration of Urban October and responding to the call by the UN Habitat, where it encourages organizations, communities, cities, and government to focus its attention on urban issues and sustainable development, as the center, we have decided to create this exposition webinar where we enlighten the urban community about the role of smart cities in accelerating the realization of sustainable development goals. And in our panel this evening, we have Marissa Jordan, who's the program manager of Carnegie, California, at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in California. We have Lindiwe Nkosi, who is the content and program director for both the African Smart Cities Summit and the Big Five Construct South Africa Expo. We also have Sizwe Dlamini, who is currently serving as the head of strategy at the Municipal Council of Manzini, Swaziland. We also have Craig Clulow, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Kigali Innovation City, Rwanda, and Lawrence Boya, who is the Director of the Smart Cities Program at the City of Johannesburg Metropolitan. Now, Sustainable Development Goals are an urgent call for action by all countries developed and developing in a global partnership. And SDG 11 particularly calls for cities, human settlements that are inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And for us to explore SDG 11, we have organized this webinar so that the panelists that we have invited this evening can enlighten us as to how cities, or what is the role of cities, or how cities could realize sustainable development goals. And first we'll go to Lindy Nkosi. Lindy, could you please give us a detailed outline of what a smart cities is? Because it is an open-ended concept with a variation of definitions. And so could you please outline to us what is a smart city and how can the technology used in these cities propel safety, inclusion, and urban sustainability, thus responding to SDG 11? Thank you. Over to you.
100%. Thank you so much, Luma, for having me. Thank you so much. Good evening and good morning to my fellow panelists and to all of the people who are online. I'm just going to share my screen because I did prepare a presentation to answer this question. And everyone, just let me know if you can see my screen, and if you can, let me know if you can hear me as well.
Can see your screen and you're audible. Thank you.
Awesome. So in answering your question with regards to the definition of a smart city and how smart cities relate to the SDG 11, a smart city uses digital technologies and data-driven systems to improve the urban infrastructure, the services, and the overall quality of life for its citizen. Any smart city definition I've heard, everyone will tell you it's for an improved life, it's for a better life for the citizens, because this is what we're looking out for. We're looking for a better health, a better life, and that is what a smart city aims to do. The core elements from this definition is technology integration. So this is us using technology to best meet the needs that we have. It's the IoT, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, everyone going crazy about AI at the moment, your data analytics and automation. With regards to urban efficiency, we're talking about optimizing resources like energy, water, and transportation. How are we optimizing these resources? How are we making life easier for transportation? So between you getting to school, getting to work, and getting back home, is that easy for you? You see the introductions of the Gautrain train, you see the introductions of your Ubers. We're trying to get smarter, we're trying to get safer, we're trying to make people living in these communities feel safe, feel seen and comfortable. Likewise with water, likewise with energy. And the purpose ultimately behind a smart city is to address urban challenges. If you can address the urban challenges with regards to your smart city plan, you've solved the problem. You've solved what keeps most people up at night. We are trying to address overpopulation. Do we know who's who in the zoo? Do we know who's around? Who are our neighbors? Who are the people coming into the country and building a life for themselves? How are we addressing overpopulation, especially in cities? Because we see a lot of migration into the cities, especially in Africa. Pollution. With increased number of people in a particular country, the more polluted it gets. If you think back to pre-1994 and how many South Africans and foreign nationals were in the country then, and the pollution rates versus now, is a great jump that took place there because more people came into South Africa. And as a result, pollution is one of our biggest problems, especially in Johannesburg. The infrastructure strain, how we're still using roads that Paul Kruger built, how we haven't expanded in terms of urbanization, schools, hospitals, clinics. Do we have enough of those going around? And inefficiencies. The purpose of any smart city needs to be to address these urban challenges. Then we're solving the problem. With regards to connecting the SDG 11 through to a smart cities, we're talking really about how the SDG focuses on making cities inclusive. It's talking about how we're making cities safer. The woman and the girl child, and even nowadays the boy child, does not need to be unsafe in their birth country, in their home. How are we making everyone feel safe? And how are we creating and building cities that are going to be resilient? In South Africa, we've seen now quite a number of natural disasters, even visiting our shores. And these are disasters we never thought we'd experience in our lifetime. But here we are now having to think resilient. How are we building cities that are going to be here in 50 years to come, in 80 years to come, in 100 years to come? And obviously the very big thing, sustainable. We want to use cleaner resources, greener, because we want our planet to last longer. The smart cities aligns with the SDG 11 by reducing your environmental impact through efficient energy and resource use. It's ensuring access to affordable housing and urban services. We saw how the University of Johannesburg introduced the 3D printing. So we now know to say there is a technology that can address affordability when it comes to houses. There is no reason for South Africa to have shacks mushrooming across the country uncontrollably, We need to have a clear strategy on how we're going to build affordable housing and how we're going to control urbanization as people move into the city. How is this being controlled? And then lastly, it's enhancing resilience to natural disasters through predictive technologies. KZN has been worstly hit by natural disasters. I mean, the first flood turned into another storm and another storm. It's as if just as you start rebuilding your house, another flood comes over. How are we building resilient cities? And I know KZN has been around for as long as we've been around, for instance, but how are we now looking at the infrastructure of KZN and making it stronger? Can we look into how the areas in the USA that are affected by the hurricanes, can we do a study there? Because here we are, we're getting flooded in. How can we make our places more resilient? And then there are 3 points that the SDG 11 addresses. And one of those is safety. So we're talking about smart surveillance and your policing. We've seen in Gauteng, the Premier Panyaza Lesufi, who's introduced now cameras, and this is in a partnership with a private company, and it's cameras across the city of Johannesburg, and this is going to help with identifying crimes as they happen. This system is going to feed into the police, so investigation becomes easier. Criminals are caught quickly this time, as opposed to years and years up until your case decides to grow legs and you forget about it. We see that being introduced, which we do support. So cameras with AI can detect crime in real time, and predictive policing tools help preempt threats. And then we're seeing disaster response. If we were to have sensors detect hazards like floods or earthquakes with real-time data enabling faster emergency services, we see that this is what the city of KwaZulu-Natal, so it's eThekwini municipality, they had to start creating a data response for the municipality to say, where are we? What are the affected areas? How does that look like? Who's been helped? Who hasn't been helped? Because it's real time. It keeps changing. And with another disaster coming in, all that information needs to be updated. How do we update that information? Sensors that detect that information can come through. And then we look into the inclusion topic to say, okay, how are we being inclusive here? So it's access for all. Smart cities ensure digital inclusion through affordable internet access. Your smart infrastructure, for example, accessible public transport. We see with the introduction of your Bolts and your Ubers, how it's easier now for young people to move around, and your more mobile city services with inclusivity, with giving people access to what they need most, which is connectivity or transport, health services. You are improving the life of everyone who's responsible there. And then citizen engagement. You want the people that you're servicing to be able to give you feedback as to whether you're winning or you're losing, right? Apps that facilitate community engagement and transparency, allowing residents to report issues. Regarding lights out on the streets or traffic lights not working. Here in Ekurhuleni, we've got traffic lights that have been chopped off. So it would be nice to have an app to report all of that happening. And we can actually, in essence, participate in decision making. Brazil has got a really phenomenal case study on how even their democracy is on the palm of their hands and everyone gets to decide what happens next. And then the other thing there is urban sustainability. So we're looking at energy efficiency. Smart grids reduce the power waste. And while smart buildings use automated systems to manage energy consumption, and we see this in most of the smart cities that exist here in South Africa. Waterfall City does this very well. You can pick up a water leakage on the Deloitte building because it's smart grid. So there's no water wastage that happens in Waterfall City because everything is you can monitor it, you can measure it, and you can watch for loopholes that you're not supposed to be having. Waste management, again, between Barcelona does this very well, and as well as Singapore. They've got phenomenal examples on how IoT-enabled waste bins and recycling centers optimize the collection routes and they reduce pollution. Really phenomenal stuff on what Singapore has done. Singapore being just the size of Johannesburg, but they have it right in terms of how to manage their waste management, incorporating smart cities. If we could learn from them, we would be far as the city. And then your green spaces. This is us looking at smart sensors which monitor your air quality, they monitor your water usage, biodiversity issues, ensuring a sustainable urban environment. And this is what smart cities can do to support the SDG 11. With my conclusions, as my 10 minutes is almost up, for me, in summary, it's that smart cities are more than just your high-tech centers. They are holistic ecosystems that use technology to address the SDG 11 by ensuring safety, inclusion, and sustainability. And if we have to look forward, our future innovations in AI, in blockchain, in 5G will further enhance the capabilities of smart cities in meeting global sustainability goals. And technology alone isn't the solution. Collaboration is. How am I, as a citizen, a decision maker in the area that I live in? How does government involve me in their budget planning, in their policy formation? Do I even have a say in that? It's about collaboration. Government alone can't do it alone. They need us to jump in and we do it together. So for me here, my closing words would be, let's continue the dialogue on how cities can leverage smart technologies, not just for efficiency purposes, but we're looking at, we want to build communities here that are inclusive, that are safe, that are sustainable. How can we ensure that innovations like AI and IoT and data analytics work for everyone? The future of urban living depends on the steps we take now. Let's work together to build smarter cities that realize the full potential of SDG 11. And
Thank you very much, Lindy. Thank you very much. That was very much informative. And thank you for raising examples that are closer to home. And also, I like the fact that you highlight that technology in smart cities, even though it's the core element, but it's an enabler.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Considering time, we'll quickly move over to Craig. Craig, I believe that Kigali Innovation City is still in its developmental stage. However, could you please share as to what measures is the city taking to ensure safety within the city as well as sustainability? Thank you. Over to you, Craig.
There you go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you audible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Kigali Innovation City is it's a real life, real practical example of a smart city. We are already in development. So the project already consists of 3 universities, and we're about to start our 4th university. It's relatively unique in the way that the aim of Kigali Innovation City is to develop very much a mixed, integrated city. I've worked on a lot of projects around the world, namely Dubai Internet City, and I think one of the things we didn't get 100% right at Dubai Internet City is we didn't get enough of a mix, a bit more of a fruit salad than just all pineapple. So I'll just skip through some projects. So what the project now is working very much on is mapping out the rest of the key components of the project. So we already have 4 international universities, and the universities within our development are very, very focused around technology and innovation, which then leads into the smart city discussion. So we have Carnegie Mellon University from the United States, Pittsburgh. We have ALU, African Leadership University from Mauritius. We have the African Institute of Mathematical Science, and then we have the University of Rwanda Biomedical Science. So you can see that all of our universities are very much focused around technology innovation, which really then helps us plug into the whole concept of a smart city. So these are just a couple of images. The project at the moment is about, we're at about 30% phase, so that's all of the academic component. And one of the other challenges we're trying to do is to integrate the development with industry. So we already have a couple of operating tenants in our project, and that includes a vaccine, a company that's developing and doing research around antibiotics. And I'm just going to go through to our smart city section. And they are doing research, development, and manufacturing of hospital-grade antibiotics. Other tenants that we're working with are IT-based companies, technology companies, satellite companies, drone companies, data centers, so they're all around that focus. So our smart city features, and it's a component that sits very much within our entire master plan, and the very similar to the components that you mentioned. The components are very much around mobility. So our project is a very pedestrian-friendly project where the pedestrian is king and the automobile or cars are secondary. Energy, how do we manage energy? So one of the unique things we're going to do is we're actually going to bring in a bulk energy supply into our project, and we'll be one of the largest consumers of electricity in the whole country because we've got a data center. But what we want to implement is a integrated smart metering system so that all of our tenants can see exactly what their real-time consumption of power is. And we're going to do that for power, water, and internet. So we go into each of those components. So as I said earlier, it's very much I think some of the points you talked about in KZN, where vehicle recognition, and then understand how people move around the project, and then public transport strategies. How do people get around? Particularly, we have somewhere in the order of about 14,000 students in our project. So we're looking at different smart ways to get around the project. Back to utilities. So currently in Rwanda, we have a prepaid system of power, which is, I think we've all experienced going to a party and the power goes off halfway through the party. So within KIC, you will have real time on your phone exactly where your utility consumption is. And you can see some of the stuff we're working down here on the right-hand side. Same for water. Again, you were talking about, how ways that we are looking at reducing utilities. So first, it's very much about understanding how much people are consuming, when they're consuming it, and how they're consuming it. And then we can work quite closely on things like you were talking about earlier, leak detection. So these are real examples that we're putting in. And then one of the other components on the back end of water, obviously, is we're looking at how do we work with our wastewater. So all of our tenants have to do pre-treatment on site, and we're helping them and working with them on ways that they can do that better. Again, pulling what you talked a little bit about, bringing all of these smart features into each one of our buildings. So we will end up with somewhere in the order of about 45 buildings. And so the plan is to have them also all integrated into a smart system where the central management of the whole estate can actually monitor and see how utilities are being consumed. We're looking at how do you get around KIC. We're looking at e-bikes, we're looking at scooters, to really enforce the fact that, our project is about pedestrians and walkable. Community engagement again. How does Kigali Innovation City, as a master developer, how do they interface with all of their tenants? And our tenants range from students all the way through academic professionals into the corporate industry, high IT. So we're going to have a couple of different platforms on how we communicate with our different types of cities. We've got a lot of integrated technology into the whole project. So, how do we receive that information? How do we store it? But I think more importantly, how are we going to use that within the project to make it run better? Sometimes it's a bit boring, but also facilities management. How are we going to operate KIC? So that's everything from mowing the grass, picking up the rubbish, and then all the way through to long-term preventative maintenance. And, the plan is for all of that to be online as well. And then one of the questions you asked there is security. So one of the luxuries in Rwanda is, Rwanda is one of the safest countries that I've ever lived in the world. And that includes, having lived in the US and the Middle East and Australia. But the government here, we've invested quite a lot in terms of security, both physical security within our project. So we will have integrated security teams walking around, monitoring, making sure people don't drop rubbish, because in Rwanda, that's a big no-no. We don't have any rubbish here. All the way through to, you'll see here, we have integrated CCTV network, which actually goes straight back into the Rwanda National Police. So we'll have a direct feedback through, the municipal systems. They're our key elements that we're doing at KIC. A lot of these we're not talking about. We've actually started to implement in the project already. And we've actually been successful in winning a grant from the US government to take this project from where it is at the moment in terms of smart city, and to now start to implement more of it within our project. And then the plan is that once this project is up and running, that it'll start to slowly mushroom out of our project into other components of Kigali. Kigali is quite a unique city. It's so spoken about as one of the most fastest urbanized growing cities in Africa. Not the most urbanized, but the most fastest growing urbanized city in Africa. So we've got a very young population. Our population dynamic is about 70% of the population is under the age of 30, and the average age is about 19 to 20. So you've got a very young, very tech-savvy population that's coming through. And, that's why all our universities are very much focused. And we work very closely with all of our universities on how we're going to further develop these programs through developments of apps, smart metering systems, and then how we take that data and we use that data to, make it a more efficient city to run. A lot of stuff on the web now about KIC if people want to read more, things about the different components that we have. Thank you very much. 9 minutes.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you very much for that presentation. Just a quick one to our audience. If you have any question, please write it in the chat box, and also outline to whom the question is directed to. We will head to Sizwe, who is the head of strategy at Manzini municipality in Swaziland. Sizwe, as the head of strategy, could you share to us what are the building blocks for resilient cities, and how is Manzini responding to SDG 11, considering that we are only 6 years away from 2030?
Thank you, Shuma, and good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to my colleagues, the panelists, and to our guests. Good afternoon to my colleagues. I see they've joined here from Manzini. And yes, thank you so much. Manzini is in Eswatini, the Kingdom of Eswatini, just next to South Africa, at the southern eastern part, yeah, just between South Africa and Mozambique. That's where we are. Maybe, man, sorry that I could not prepare a slide presentation. I saw the minutes, I thought, oh, it is just very, very brief, but I have something structured here for my discussion. Yes, I think, thank you for this important question, Shuma. I think starting with the building blocks for cultivating resilient cities, I think the World Bank projects global population to be living in cities to be over 50% towards 66% by 2050. If you look at that state, I know when you get into the different regions of the world, the population distribution might be different, but you can see that already populations are flocking the urban centers for various needs that they might have, especially in the southern part of the African region, the continent. With that, then it brings the importance of urban areas and the importance of planning, the urban planning, sustainable planning for the urban centers. It is also important for us to acknowledge that creating resilient cities and communities is a long-term endeavor, which is not an event, but also it is very important to ensure the safer and prosperous cities, especially in the southern. But we have seen the global trends where we're seeing it globally, cities are being ravaged by climatic conditions that are so unpredictable, and also they are destroying property and life. So some of these destruction you also see maybe in the region in Africa. Some of these disasters are man-made, like fires and floods. So that's what really we can say we have to look at as urban practitioners to say on a daily basis, how much are we ensuring the resilience of our cities if they are hit by this global climate change. So in terms of the city vulnerabilities, I think coming up with the solutions, we have to frame the problem correctly to say what causes our cities to be so vulnerable. Which when you look at those issues that causes our cities to be vulnerable, is the increase of the daily migration into the urban areas, especially this side of Africa. I think our city, Manzini, is experiencing two types of migration, which is some of it is it's a temporal migration, a daily migration, where people comes into the city during the day and go back to the rural side of things by the evening. And also, we're seeing the concentration of resources and capacities at national level, and leaving us at the local level. Maybe most cities you find that they are inadequately resourced in terms of the human resource and also capacities to deal with these issues. We also seeing that the decline of ecosystems because of the developments that we're having here in Africa. A lot of constructions that are currently happening, they tend to destroy the ecosystem, which helps us prevent some of these disasters. This creates the vulnerability of our cities. And then now coming into building the resilience of the cities, one of the important things that we have realized in the city here is the engagement of all the stakeholders, multiple stakeholders engagement, and also the sensitization of the different stakeholders and different population dynamics, because some of them are poor, they are in informal settlement, and some of them, they are in those affluent type of townships who are much better, stronger to be resilient against these disasters. Once we did that, what we did also as a city was trying to come up with our own disaster risk reduction strategies. whereby we first started by assessing the risk in the city, most of those risk-prone areas in the city, especially the informal settlements, to try and see those prone areas to the disasters and to their vulnerabilities. And thereafter, we managed to develop our own disaster risk reduction strategies that will come up with the risk mitigation for the city. I think one of the important things we have learned is building a stronger institutional capacity internally, because usually as municipalities, we don't have people who are sitting or working daily on a daily basis, working on the disaster issues. So we only react when there are disasters happening within the city, then we start running around. So having a very strong disaster reduction strategies, it's a very, very mitigation that would help most cities to improve their capacities to deal with these disasters. I think also the working with the different stakeholders and the international development partners like United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction, it helps a lot in terms of information sharing, knowledge sharing, and also capacity building, and also learning from other cities who have experienced such disasters. I think Lindiwe was touching on the issue of eThekwini, which we also work with them where they share information pertaining such disasters, because these things, it always seems too far to happen until it hits you by tomorrow, and then we have to react. So I think there's a lot of knowledge sharing and learning that we have to do as cities, especially if you're looking at the way the cities are becoming just a global community because of the climate. If it hits South Africa, obviously it affects Eswatini, it affects Mozambique. Every time we see something happening in Durban, we get worried here in Swaziland, or something happening in Maputo, Mozambique, we know something is coming to Eswatini. So it is important that we partner the cities to try and build their capacity to deal with the disasters. What also we have tapped in on through the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction is the collaborations with our own National Disaster Agency locally, which is working closely with the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction. Working together with these structures, I think we have gotten a lot of capacity building and also the assistance to learn about the systems to try and prevent this. And one of the programs that we were learning on is the one for the Making City Resilient 2030 campaign that is being run currently. I think this campaign is sort of a linchpin of all global strategic frameworks aimed at ensuring inclusive, resilient, sustainable cities by 2030. A direct contribution into the SDGs, especially the SDG number 11, which also makes cities and human settlements inclusive, safer, resilient, and sustainable. Looking at this now, this campaign of United, guided by United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction, it integrates all the 2015-2030 Sendai framework, the disaster risk reduction, the 2015 Paris Declaration and climate action, and the 2016 new urban agenda, which seeks to establish sustainable urban centers, working with the UN Habitat, which is trying to assist also on that front. So I think as a city, in commencing with the SDGs, I think we started post 2015. Yes, we're not very much that strong working on the SDGs. And before we know it, we're dealing with the COVID-19, but we had already started to conceptualize on saying, how can we contribute to the SDGs and make our city sustainable? In doing that, post-COVID, I think we started robustly by developing a sustainability framework for the city, which seeks to integrate the SDGs into our own integrated development plans. These integrated development plans is a very consultative and stakeholder participative strategic framework guiding the development of the city towards 2030. So we incorporated the SDGs into our development plan. and thereafter to enhance the implementation of our integrated development plan, we recently adopted the smart city concept, which is at the conceptualization stage. I think we've done our consultation with internal organization, local organization, including our science technology park and our communication commission, who are keen to support the municipality in establishing this concept of smart city, which we believe it will assist us to address more of the targets of the SDG 11 in particular. We understand that we've got 17 SDGs that we have to deal with as a city, but usually when we're discussing it, the focus for local authorities or for towns and cities is the SDG 11. However, we've been working almost in quite a number of the SDGs in trying to address issues of hunger in the city, issues of health, and issues of inclusive and equitable education, gender equality, quite a lot. But in integrating the smart city concept, we've already started implementing the pilot projects, which are trying to give us just a step to get into smart city planning, because we want to solve the urban challenges and help our people to have to access our services easier. I think we've got quite a number of projects that we are piloting currently. We've already installed CCTV cameras in the city to ensure our community safety. We've already started upgrading our traffic lights, making them smart, and also making them have those smart sensors within them. And also in our building, we've started installing the smart lighting systems to ensure that we will have those motion sensors, which will save on the energy front. The city is already piloting the installations of solar lighting within the city streets. So these are the solutions that we are currently working on in trying to ensure that our city is sustainable towards 2030. And we believe that we will contribute immensely on the 2030 SDGs. However, I may conclude by saying that going through on the UN SDG progress report, we noted that out of the 169 targets of the SDGs, 135 SDGs are the only one that had accessible data, which means data on the SDGs is still a problem. So as a city, we're also encountered with the data issue, and we are currently working on establishing a data center that will assist us to bring the baseline for the city and also be able to target so that by 2030, we're able to measure ourselves going forward. So also the underfunding of SDGs. I think globally, the UN has highlighted that the underfunding of about $4 trillion, the SDGs are so underfunded. So it is important for us and also maybe for our country to prioritize the issue of SDGs in terms of the funding aspect also, because if you look at the funding gap, I think that's the major issue that is taking us a step back. I think that's what I can share for now, Fluma. And thank you so much, colleagues.
Okay, thank you very much, Sizwe. It's good to know that Manzini is in full motion towards 2030. And also thank you for making time of sharing about your city. Drawing to Marissa, we continuously talk of resilient cities and sustainable cities. Can you please just differentiate for us? What do you mean when you talk of a resilient city? And what do you mean when you talk of a sustainable city? Because these two concepts are different. And also, just share what's happening in California towards 2030. Are cities in California gradually responding to SDGs? What's happening? Thank you. Over to you, Marissa.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone and to my colleagues for their insightful presentations. And thank you for allowing me to present today on California. I'm really excited to be here. So just a brief mentioning about our organization. So I am the program manager of Carnegie, California, the West Coast hub of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, the oldest think tank in the US. Carnegie, California, we focus on subnational affairs and foreign policy. And so now on your question of resilient cities and sustainable cities, those presentations before mine did a great job of describing resilient and sustainable cities. When I consider a resilient city, I refer to the summary of urban policymakers, part of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Their definition, shortened for the sake of time. Resilience is the ability of social, economic, and ecological systems to withstand, adapt, and transform in the face of hazardous events, while maintaining their essential functions and identity and capacities for adaptation and transformation. In the summary of urban policymakers' assessment reports, they describe something called climate resilient development in cities and urban areas. And this is a framework and process that allows cities and urban areas to undertake activities that simultaneously promote climate adaptation, mitigation, and sustainable development, while also highlighting the role of equity, inclusion, and justice in pursuing necessary actions. Some examples of resilience that come first to mind are risk assessments for a city of potential hazards that a city may face. And when doing those risk assessments, creating climate resilient infrastructure that can withstand those hazards and then also include informal settlements. Currently, there is little evidence of resilient infrastructure investment in informal settlements. And then lastly, community preparedness programs. Do communities know where to access safe services before and after a natural disaster, for instance? Are these services staffed properly, and can critical services continue to be provided during and after a disaster? Now, creating a resilience in a city can happen at the same time as sustainability, as outlined in that framework. Sustainability, though, focuses on meeting the present and future needs without compromising on the environmental impacts that cities have. So cities become more sustainable by prioritizing renewable energy, the creation and protection of green spaces. Sustainable cities also prioritize community health and well-being through the reduced pollution, community engagement initiatives, accessible and equitable infrastructure, including access to information, like through high-speed internet access, and easy city navigation by foot, bicycle, or public transit. And then through this access to information and easy navigation, we hope that communities can gain access or easier access to social services and employment opportunities, just to name two. Now, moving to California specifically, California has a strong role in realizing both resilient and sustainable cities. California has a rich history of driving climate and sustainability innovation fueled by strategic city partnerships. In a recent Carnegie, California paper co-authored with city diplomacy expert Wyatt Frank, we examined the global components and engagements of 9 California cities. Now, the research is not narrowly or explicitly focused on the Sustainable Development Goals, but these diplomatic efforts described in the paper significantly contribute to achieving them. Some initial key findings were that these cities' international networks and relationships drove progress in areas like culture, education, trade, agriculture, and sustainability. And many of these partnerships focus on economic prosperity through trade and investment, while also prioritizing sustainability and realizing those goals. So due to limited time, I will just mention 4 of these cities that we explored. The first being Los Angeles. So just to mention a few features of this city in terms of the SDGs, under the leadership of former Mayor Eric Garcetti, now U.S. Ambassador, and the current Deputy Mayor Aaron Bramagen, LA published voluntary local reviews of its progress on the SDGs in 2019 and 2021. This effort helped build momentum around voluntary local reviews for other cities. 2 global engagements from LA that are worth mentioning as it realizes the SDGs. LA is part of several global city networks focused on knowledge sharing and around mitigating and adapting to climate change, including the C40 cities and the Urban 20. Recognizing the importance of city partnerships and realizing SDG goals, recently under the current mayor, Karen Bass, LA is developing a first-of-its-kind strategy in the US to increase trade and investment with cities and countries in Africa. This strategy is being shaped by over a dozen listening sessions with the African diaspora within LA, who helped identify opportunities, goals, and actions that the city and partners can take to deepen economic ties between Los Angeles and countries and cities on the continent. A top line from the listening sessions, and one that will be in the strategy, is ensuring any mutual beneficial commercial partnerships be sustainable, equitable, and non-extractive. Now, if we go almost 3 hours south of LA, there's the city San Diego. San Diego boasts several global components and engagements that make it a global player in realizing the SDGs. I'll mention 2 key highlights. Like LA, San Diego leverages its city's networks to realize its sustainability goals. In 2024, San Diego launched its first voluntary local review of the SDGs through its partnership with the global city network ICLEI, or the Local Governments for Sustainability. Second, San Diego is a great example of a strong and long binational relationship, particularly with its border city, Tijuana, Mexico. Some long-term goals around a strategy that was jointly created between San Diego and Tijuana, the San Diego-Tijuana Binational Mega Region Strategy, it's a mouthful, include increasing economic prosperity, environmental protection, and educational resilience. Now, a third city, 3.5 hours north of LA, is the city of Fresno. So located in the Central Valley, Fresno is the heart of the United States' top agricultural production county. Fresno is a good example of integrating its university, the University of California, Fresno, into understanding community needs to advance sustainable agricultural practices. Beyond its university, Fresno has forged significant international relationships that are relevant to the SDGs. Some notable partnerships include Vienna, Austria, where Mayor Jerry Dyer and a local delegation went to learn about Vienna's social housing model. Mayor Dyer also led a delegation to Tokyo, Japan, centered around downtown revitalization and high-speed rail. Fresno is one example of California not just being empowered by its big cities to realize the SDGs, but also by its mid-size and small cities. And finally, almost 3 hours northwest of Fresno sits San Jose. Located in the Southern Bay Area, San Jose is a hub for innovation, leveraging its Silicon Valley roots to integrate technology with community-centric governance. In terms of global collaboration to realize their goals, in 2024, San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan hosted Dublin's Lord Mayor to share knowledge on affordable housing, climate and energy policy, and economic development, all of which are relevant to both cities. So this example, as well as the many examples in California, highlight the significance of knowledge sharing, as my fellow panelists have also highlighted, and city-to-city partnership in furthering efforts around the SDGs in California. As a final note, and one that is relevant to this event, and particularly to Lindiwe's and Craig's presentations, Carnegie, California recently hosted a consultation of private sector representatives and policymakers to inform the UN Habitat's framework for people-centered smart cities, a component of SDG 11. Public-private partnerships are one component in developing smart cities, as mentioned. And to that end, one key takeaway from the convening was on collaboration between the private and public sector. It was noted that private companies need to work with the public sector effectively in developing smart cities, and they need to consider the community's needs. A second takeaway is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Smart cities have different meanings for different cities. It's crucial to involve community members in the decision-making process and recognize that not everyone wants to live in the same type of city. And then finally, there was a note on workforce development and evaluation. The private sector can contribute significantly to workforce development, particularly in the green economy. But there also needs to be a better understanding of the job demands and training to employment pipelines within those cities, especially within the public sector. And then there also needs to be funding for evaluation around program effectiveness. So that's it for my presentation. I was really excited to give you a little taste of what California is doing with the SDGs, and then what we here at Carnegie, California are doing to help out with them as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marissa. And thank you for highlighting that smart cities as a concept cannot just be parachuted in a particular community or city. Smart cities, the concept itself needs to be context specific, responding to the particular needs of that particular community. I see that we have a couple of questions on our chat box. Should I read them out, or have you guys noted them? The first one is for Craig from Victor. And he asks, does the water leak detection work on the city reticulation alone, or do they work for leaks in individual accommodation units as well?
Yeah, I sent a private message, but basically what we're doing is that we're getting a bulk connection into KIC. So we know exactly how much we know how much water the city is providing us. Then we have another meter on the other side of the tank. So then we know exactly how much is leaving. So you can detect leaks like that. And then, you'll have a leak between a meter between the outflow of the tank and the entrance of every single tenancy. So that the computer can analyze exactly how much water there should be in the pipe system. And then it works out how much water is actually going through the meter. And if they don't correlate, then you've got a leak in the infrastructure. But all of the work that we're doing within KIC is within a boundary of KIC. So the plan is to get it to keep working within KIC. And then we're actually part of a greater project called PEZ, Prime Economic Zone. So then the plan, which is ours 62 hectares, Prime Economic Zone is about 250 hectares. So then the plan is it will slowly take it out into the PEZ and implement the same strategies, and then try and upscale it for the whole of the city.
Okay, thank you. There's also a question for Lindy asking, what process does the smart city use to ensure housing diversity, housing types, density within its approach, and what are the challenges?
Sure. So if we have to look at Lanseria, the smart city, and you look at the plan for that, the first thing about housing diversity there is data-driven planning. So it's a matter of what does the data tell us about the city that we're trying to build, or the already existing city that we're trying to transform into smart city. So you've got your data collection and your analytics, where smart cities leverage on this data, and from sensors, it's from public records. So the city of Johannesburg, the northern city that forms part of Northwest Province need to provide. The city of Tshwane as well would have to sort of issue out their public records with regards to movement. How does the N14 look like? And how does the N1 look like around that area? And your real-time monitoring systems. If you will remember, before they built the e-tolling systems, they had a little camp. It's about 2 people, and they swapped turns, and they monitor how many cars drive by this particular road. And I remember we had it here on the N12, and literally when they started building the e-tolls, everywhere that those people camped, you had the e-tolling system. So it's real-time monitoring to analyze the housing needs in this instance. And this data can include your demographics. So who's going to be living there because of work, or who's going to be studying there because of the universities that exist or the high schools that are going to be there? Is it a family house, etc.? Land use as well, transportation patterns to identify gaps in the housing diversity. And then also we need to start looking at your geologists and including them with regards to our town plannings and our city plannings places as well. And this is something that Waterfall City did very well with regards to their geospatial mapping. Their platform uses a geospatial tool to visualize areas for varying densities and housing types. And this allowed them, in terms of the urban planners who then were responsible for the city, to design and adjust the zoning policies accordingly. So this was phenomenal for them. And one thing that the city, Waterfall City, did very well as well was the zoning and land use regulations, to say where is it going to be the retirement villages, your entry level into the workplace, where you're going to be seated, where we're going to put the corporate parks that exist over there. So inclusionary zoning was one of the things they did very well, which is commercial property as well as residential property and how those complement each other. And then your density zoning. This is where the city regulates the areas to allow for higher density development, such as your apartment buildings, your townhouses. And you see a lot of them splurging up in the city of Johannesburg, for instance. This is where you can manage traffic between our peak times. And then thirdly, the public-private partnerships. Collaborations with developers is one way to do this. And smart cities generally work closely with private developers, and they incentivize diverse housing projects. And this is what we need to see. We need to see government, the Department of Human Settlements, even at a provincial level, when you start seeing them having a conversation with your Baldwin properties, right? And then it's your sustainable urban design, the compact use. This is when we use timber. This is when we use the 3D printing for these houses. And then with regards to the challenges that exist, affordability, unfortunately, becomes one of those things, because where will this money come from? We live in a political scene where the government has promised its people to build them houses and give them free electricity and free water. Not really possible if you look at the budget. So the affordability, unfortunately, becomes high. The rising costs, while smart cities do spur economic growth, they can also lead to gentrification. And this is where the development of a tech-enabled infrastructure and housing increases the property values. Everyone wants a smart house, and a smart house is not cheap. And then it's your balancing affordable housing with market interests. How does that look like? Are we pricing ourselves out of business? And then regulation. Do we have the policy that supports the housing plan around these communities? So your zoning restrictions. We in South Africa, the last legislation around land was in the 70s, 1970s, in the 2000s, and now we haven't had real policy that speaks to how we can use land wisely. And if you think about it, your Baldwin properties are turning around farms into cities. And we still don't have a joining policy that actually supports that, which is why it becomes a tedious process, really. And I think another challenge would be the infrastructure and resource strain. I know the infrastructure, South Africa have issued out their infrastructure plan rollout. It's sitting at about 860 billion rands of infrastructure projects that are to be rolled out into the country. Phenomenal, it's great stuff. But how does it look like? And how do you actually take it down bit by bit, so to speak? And then the digital divide, the access to smart systems. Some people are not tech savvy. Some people can't, understand what technology is or have a smartphone in the palm of their hands. That also makes it quite difficult for us to implement these housing plans effectively. And then obviously land availability and your space limitations. These shacks that are taking up our country and eating up the beauty of the landscape we have, unfortunately, are going to rob us of proper housing that the Department of Human Settlements, and even at a provincial level, could roll out, because before you know it, you don't have space. And according to our laws, you can't move people unless you have a place to set them up. So it really is a tricky one, but to answer the long and short of that, that's how I would put it.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Lindy, for a comprehensive response. There's also another question for Craig from Sizwe, reading, how has the government of Rwanda successfully navigated bureaucratic hurdles to unlock land and rezone it for the development of a 60-hectare smart city project like Kigali Innovation City, especially in contrast to the slower land use policies in South Africa that often impede similar developments?
Yeah, I know. As we were talking earlier, I've worked in 42 countries in Africa, in large scale property development, and there's a couple of good things that Rwanda have got right. One is they have a national cadastral system, so the entire country has been surveyed and it's all registered. We have very, very strict land title rules here, and we have a very much documented, process-driven expropriation process. Some of the other countries that I've worked in Africa, we might have 7 or 8 different land titles on top of the one piece of land. You have community land, tribal land, private land, government land. So now Rwanda's got a very, very structured cadastral system. And, the government of Rwanda is very, very transparent. We have a president who's driving the country very, very hard, and I even having come from Australia, I find it extremely refreshing to have a government that is driving and everybody's going in the one direction. And that's from the president through the prime minister all the way through the ministers. I can call a minister like this, and they're very accessible. So, we have another unique organization who's one of the shareholders in my project, an organization called Rwandan Development Board, and it's a single entity that's responsible for all foreign direct investment. I affectionately call them the Ministry of Getting Stuff Done, and they have a mandate, a direct mandate from the president to make these kind of projects happen. So we're lucky. We're inside what's called a PEZ, which is the Prime Economic Zone. So within that Prime Economic Zone, you are exempt from a lot of the bureaucracy of normal countries, of the government, for instance, but also it's a free zone. It's a tax-free zone. So we have a lot of people, but the simple answer is that we have a government here that's all going in the one direction. It's a very cohesive government. It's a driven government. It's very much a performance-based ministry. Some of the ladies will be pleased to know, I think we have 60% of our ministers are female. I think we've got the highest female government representation in the world, and most of those ladies are in their mid-40s. So lots of energy. It's extremely refreshing to work in an environment where everybody's going in the same direction, and that's how you can affect change. You can affect change quite quickly then, when you've got people all working in the same direction.
Okay, thanks, Craig. The last one, it's just a remark from my colleague Kabaso, thanking all the speakers for the informative presentations. I'd like to ask if there's anyone who'd like to ask a question besides the ones written here. If not, we'll then just give our panelists 2 minutes each for closing remarks.
I kind of gave most of my closing remarks then, and that's why my project is as successful as it is. You know, as a very small example, you know, we have Carnegie Mellon campus in our project. They're teaching the 4th best degree in the world in our campus. Now, previously, the government of Rwanda used to send Rwandese to Carnegie Mellon in the US to get an education. Only 1 in 9 came back to Rwanda. So instead of cancelling the project, the president basically turned it upside down. Now we've got 335 students at Carnegie Mellon on campus every day. And of that, they're representing 34 countries in Africa, of which, you know, only I think about 30% at the moment are Rwandese. So, you know, our project is, you know, very much a smart city, not just for Rwanda, not just for East Africa, but for the entire continent. So, and a lot of the change that we're implementing, you know, those 7 things that I talked about, I think you guys talk about 9. A lot of the universities are helping us implement that change, you know, with student programs and that type of stuff. So, you know, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Let's quickly take Musa.
Good evening, colleagues. I'm speaking from the Municipal Council of Manzini, where the head of strategy, who was a presenter, Mr. Sizwe Dlamini, works. So I just wanted to find out from other cities or from the presenters who've just presented, how do you navigate the cost or in terms of implementation of smart cities programs? Is there a shortcut to it, or in terms of getting support from the government, or the only way to achieve the smart city objective, it is through the use of private PPPs, public-private partnerships? So that would be my question. I'm just worried about the cost in terms of the capital outlay of such programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Musa. Any of our colleagues who would like to tackle that?
For us, a lot of it's about cost, and it's about saving money. So, you know, bulk utilities. Just some random numbers, you know, the average consumer in Kigali is paying somewhere like 260 francs per kilowatt hour. Because I'm a bulk consumer, I'm only paying 120 francs per kilowatt hour. So half price, at least, if not more. So I'm going to pass some of that saving on to my residents. You know, water, we talked about, you know, trying to prevent water loss, which is, you know, it's a cost to the community. You know, people are prepared to pay a little bit extra for safety and security. So it's about, and I know a lot of people say it shouldn't be about cost, but, you know, if you can come up with a model where you can see, people can see that you're saving money, then, you know, most of the time I can get my projects through. But it's not easy.
Okay, thanks, Craig. I think we'll move on to closing remarks. I'm looking at time. So we'll go to Lindy, then Marissa, then Sizwe.
Sure. Thank you so much, Luma. I think for me, I mean, even to try and tackle Bruce's question, PPPs do remain a solid vehicle into the funding of a smart city. And this is because with the data that is collected, you then start creatively creating solutions to the problems that the data is giving you, which means that you can create a product, you can create an app, you can create a solution for that, and then government funding plus private funding then creates a viable solution. Here in South Africa, we pay a lot of taxes, a lot of money. If South African government use the tax wisely, we could effectively actually be able to fund a smart city, even a smart country, moving out into the villages and the rural areas, actually, in South Africa. If you think about the e-tolling system, which was a smart mobility plan that was rolled out by SANRAL, which is our national roads agency. The same year where the 20 billion rands had to be paid by the citizens, Treasury, the Auditor General, then found irregular spending in government, the whole of government, and the amount there was 20 billion rands as well. So in the same year, irregular spending in government is 20 billion rands. The e-tolls are costing the country 20 billion rands. So we could actually, as a country, build the e-tolls, have the system run and operate on the tax monies collection, but because the African government except Rwanda, this is why we are envious of Craig, the political will was not there. And it's easier to feed your tummy and your friends as opposed to sorting out the community you live in, which is quite sad. But in closing, I will say this. Smart cities are not just a phenomena that we want to reach to because the UN is looking for new projects to take over the world. It really is important if you think of what the average family looks like. If you have to consider safety, if you have to consider inclusivity, if you have to consider the ease of getting to work and school and back home, this is why we need to create smart cities. It is a safer place for all. It's where women and children most can feel the safest, and it's practical. It can be done. And this is why we're moving towards. But the lack of political will, the lack of smart leadership, the lack of smart people in government and in positions where people can actually make change, that is what is costing us, especially as a nation, to slack. We're supposed to be leading on these SDG 11. We're supposed to be leading on all of them because we've got the financial capacity, we've got the manpower. Why aren't we doing it? Lack of political will. Thanks, Luma.
Thanks, Lindy. Marissa?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm just taking in what Lindy was saying. From the California perspective, I know we are far away, but I think California, it's a leader in this space, but there's, of course, more to be done. California is the 5th largest economy in the world, and it sometimes operates like a country. And it has a role in leading in the climate space, both at the federal level within our own country and at the international level. And I think it draws on its innovation, both in policymaking and technology to realize those goals around sustainability. But more can be done. And I think California is doing more by harnessing its partnerships with global partners around the globe, and realizing these goals and working towards sustainable development, to create better outcomes for not only the communities within California, but the communities that we're in partnership with. And so I'll leave it at that. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for having me and letting me speak from the California perspective.
Thanks, Marissa. Over to you, Sizwe.
Thanks, Luma. Coincidentally, we're talking of smart cities and we're struggling with connectivity today here. I don't know why I chose this day. We tend to miss some important discussion, but we are thriving. We are trying. Hope next time we'll have a better connection. But you just wanted to highlight that as a city in Manzini, we believe that the smart city approach is really going to enhance the improvement of the quality of people here in the city. And also it will assist us in achieving the SDGs. So we will continue pursue it, I know, through partnership with the big five guys, Lindiwe's Smart Cities Summit, I think will work with them so that we come up with the proper smart city strategy for the city towards 2030. But we were willing to put in the hard work. And also, I hope Craig will also be getting in touch with him to assist us on how they are getting it out there in Kigali, so that we can see if we can contextualize it into our city. With those few remarks, Luma, may I also extend my appreciation to the Center for Study of the United States for such an incredible session, for reflecting and shining a light on urban development issues and opportunities during this Urban October period. We really appreciate. We hope it's not the end, Luma. We'll continue engaging and sharing knowledge in this great platform. And thank you so much to fellow panelists, and all the best. And thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Sizwe. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. And I'm happy now that there's collaboration already taking place. Manzini reaching out to Kigali. We're at work. Thank you, colleagues, for joining us. I will request that our panelists share the slides, because there's been a request from our guests that they please get the slides. So I'll request that you guys share the slides with me so that I can share with them. Just be on the lookout in celebration of World Cities Day on the 31st of October. We will be publishing our first ever Africa US Smart Cities Lab Bulletin, which covers a Smart Cities Lab that we had hosted in August. So yeah, just be on the lookout for that. I will communicate that in due course. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening. And to Marissa and other colleagues abroad, have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luma.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you for
Bye.
organizing.
Thank you.
Thank you.